people, and we are a group of people who have a variety of talks related to product management. So if you would like to join our community, you can join us on Telegram. And if you like what we do, you can support us on patreon.com. Today we have Ekaterina with us. She's a product designer at Omio, and she's going to talk about the different strategies which are required when you need to communicate with a designer. So I'll hand over to you, Ekaterina.
Yeah, thank you. Let me do it. Oh, shoot. Okay, let's start, guys. Hi, everyone. I'm Ekaterina. I'm a product designer. I have been for 7+ years. Worked in like B2B sector and B2C, starting with small startups and going to medium and big companies. And next 15 minutes, I'm going to be talking how to work together with product managers and maybe revealing the opposite view being as a product designer. So let's start. Okay, just take a second. Maybe you can recognize yourself being in this kind of situation where the product manager says, hey, I'm doing my best for the customer, but from the other side, the product designer comes and saying, no, it's me. I know best what's for the customer. So what happens actually here? I mean, like, usually it's the situation of overlapping areas of responsibility and not understanding who is doing what. So yeah, let's see what we can do. You probably, as a product manager, already have seen this kind of picture, but still, can you guess what it's about? Is it about product manager or actually product designer? Have you made your guess? Okay, so this picture is mostly about like product manager. However, if you add to user experience, this part also user interaction, it's also true for product manager, which means that from the general areas, a product designer and product managers are actually covering plus minus the same fields. And it actually doesn't help us at all to understand how we can differentiate who is doing what and how to collaborate together. So I'd say my recommendation is going to be that don't look at general areas, but focus more at the angle you're working. So for example, a product manager is most focused on strategy and doing road mapping, feature definition, market analysis, development management, of course, kind of responsible for profitability of the feature. All the things I'm going to be talking today, of course, it differs from the one company to another. It depends of your company's stage, of the state of your also UX maturity and how many people you have from the point of resources and also product designers. So, and what about product designer? Product designer is also more focused on user problem, on user context, how it looks and feel, on the usability and cognitive loads and user flows. So this is pretty much like general focus, but let's go further. To understand how to work with product designers and how you, being a product manager, can fit and actually complement each other, you should understand how we as designers are raised and what we are taught to do. So yeah, that's why I'm here to discuss more what's on your mind as a product designer. So maybe some of you are already kind of familiar with the 2-diamond design process and system, but just in 1 minute, I will explain it to you. So this is the design process most of designers are kind of raised and taught to do. It doesn't mean that it's how it is in reality, but still it's what we are looking for. So we have two basically major buckets. The first one is a problem space, and the second one is a solution space. So we're going from one to another, and the problem space consists of discovery phase, definition, and only after it you will have your plus minus defined brief and only then going to development phase and delivery phase. So the first one is more about thinking and understanding user need and problem, and only then going to, like do pictures, do actual visual things. To go more deeper in designer work, this is our first problem stage and how we feel about it. Usually you as designer like a little bit lost or trapped. You're in the mode where you're like in a dark wood or forest. You have so many possibilities and like no clear understanding what it is. And by defining the user need and problem, you're going step by step, slowly finding your path and mapping the whole map of the woods. And once you have the map, then you're ready to jump into solution phase and just follow your own path and go into designs. How it feels for a designer. From the perspective of actually how it feels and from the cognitive load, the problem space in our own understanding, it's around like 80% of actual thinking, analyzing, losing some hair. And when we come to the second solution space, it's just like 20% of effort. It's not that overwhelming for us because it's more like mechanical things. If you go more into details and a little separate the solution space into two, of course, exploring multiple solutions, doing drafts has more cognitive load, and then adjusting, it's much, much lesser. So the beginning of the project, it starts the most overwhelming, and yeah, the majority of work is done here. And let's see on a time scale how it is. So from ideal perspective, you should, as a designer, you should spend at least 40% on the first phase of a problem and discovery. And the more time you invest there, the less time you will go into drafts and actual visuals, because you already know all the whys, all why we're doing it, all the who we're doing it for, and then you're more focused on a proper solution which suits the most. And then the adjusting gonna be just a small part. But in reality, we usually kind of pushed to go into solution phase. We wanted to be like faster and saying, okay, let's do designs, let's do visuals, let's do A/B test, let's release, and blah, blah, blah. Of course, it depends on your company state and on maturities. And some companies do have this more kind of ideal situation, but most of them, especially startups, small and medium, they are kind of skipping the understanding of a user problem and need, the discovery of it, and they're jumping more into solutions and like, okay, let's try A/B test everything. But then what happens? You think that you're kind of shortening your time. However, doing multiple things and doing multiple features without base understanding why you're doing it and how it works in a user's mindset, without this understanding, you won't be able to actually get any profitability of the feature, or you won't be able to scale it in the future. And usually these quick jumps creates the situation where you're like, okay, we're releasing this, not so good. Let's try in 6 months to redesign and do something else and release, okay, next and next and next and next. And this is the common situation for a designer. And I'd recommend to you as a product manager to actually consider all of these questions while you're doing the initial brief to a designer. So it's super simple, but I totally recommend such questions as what user need or problem are we trying to solve here? how we do know that it's actually a user need or problem, because sometimes we are thinking, okay, this is clearly, but we don't have any actually knowledge or support from data or actual user input there. And who and for whom we are doing it, and in which circumstances they are going to be using it, because the context is usually key. Okay, how does it affect the process? Yeah, it's all the pain points from the past, where product manager kind of did problem space, already defined, had some brief, had some documentation, and then he's coming to a designer and says, oh, okay, it's already done by me. Can you go and do pictures, do visuals, do screens? However, we as designers are taught, no matter how good your brief is, and maybe just for small tweaks, it's going to work, but for medium and big projects, especially discovery one, definitely won't work. We are taught to be and to grow as designers, and the opportunity to grow here is basically to go back and still cover problem space and still to find out why we're doing it and for whom we are doing it. So it means that product manager does problem space and then comes to a product designer, and product designer still does problem space, and sometimes it's doubling and creates more like negotiations or like arguments, why it's this or that. So I'd recommend just try to do it together. You will gather more inputs and more insights from business perspective and from user-centered perspective. The view of a user, if separate generally on the focus, from product manager sees more user as a customer and have such attributes as like, okay, metrics, KPIs, and conversion. But product designer looks more on a user as a human and trying to map all the patterns and logic and habits and how to work around it. However, we should all kind of remember that at the end of the day, it's one person, and we need to combine all of it to actually build an efficient and good-looking product. So how we can do it? We can just work together. We can try to make dialogue out of your work, and remember that it's not a competition. It's not an ego. We are not building artwork. We are building products. That's why it's important to define all our strengths and try to complement here each other. So here's two circles. The left one is about product manager, and the right one is more about product designer. So we as product designers are more looking from product managers to have clear understanding of business goals, to have clear documentation and organization, all the possible tables and data. I do understand we are more into chaotic space as designers. That's why we're kind of can lack documentation and nice organization. That's why we need you guys. But apart from it, of course, we as designers can offer you more deeper understanding of user need and problem, apart from good look and feel and usability. We understand a little bit more about behavioral patterns and users' mindset, because all our design thinking starts with empathizing with the user and trying, I don't know, different methodologies like 6 heads, just understanding, okay, who am I as a user? How do I feel and look? It doesn't mean that it's like strictly separated. As I've told you before, it depends on each company individually. Plus, it depends on each product manager and each product designer. It all can be different. But the trick here is basically to talk, to start to talk to your colleagues who are you working with. And apart from going, okay, we have brief, let's do this and that, at least at first understand the backgrounds, learn more about his or her education and experience. That's how you can understand, okay, he is more visual, or he is more into habits and nailing down all the user flows and logic. Talking about practice and what I'd seen from my experience nice to do, include, at least try to include a designer in a strategy planning. It's gonna just shorten your time, because sometimes you do strategy planning without any understanding of user needs. And then once you come to a solution space, a designer can block you of saying, okay, we don't see any user problem here, and you will do double work. If you are not able to include a designer to strategy planning, please do at least coffee or elevator or lunch or whatsoever speak. It could be even 5 minutes of just, pitching your ideas. Okay, we're going to be doing this next cycle. And even in these 5 minutes, a product designer can give you a little of understanding what could be the user need there, what could be an effort. And yeah, that's how you start talking to us. I'd highly recommend brainstorming, because especially if you have only one product designer attached to your team, brainstorming works not when you're doing it alone, especially when you do have different mindsets, being a product manager and being product designer. Please do write initial brief together. It's just like at the beginning of the project. It's like a kickoff. That's how you won't get all of the answers, like who are doing it, why we're doing it. No, it's not about getting answers. The initial brief, it's about nailing all these questions and figuring out how you're gonna cover it and find the answers to it. Yeah. And we are really interested in business goals and problem statements. That's why we need you guys. So some small cases here. The first one I said was like Solution Master. It happened last year. Basically, a junior designer, she came to me saying, hey, I don't feel myself happy. I'm actually like trapped because a product manager came to me with already kind of solutions, even like with a low fidelity wireframes. What should I do? I can't grow there as a designer because I can't apply any of design thinking there. And product manager was also feeling this kind of, attitude, which it created some kind of misunderstanding, and it affected the whole process. So what I did, not that big, I'd say, just having a neutral territory for two of them to be able to speak. And once you speak to a person, we understand, okay, the actually product manager, she had a background working in B2B and only with tech teams. So she had no experience working with product designer. She had no understanding that, okay, she's kind of covering and doing more design job and like overlap. But the thing, and she didn't see it as a bad thing, because she thought, okay, I'm even helping, I'm even doing prototypes. But for a designer, it was bad because we can't grow if we are not doing the first problem phase. So they talked about it, and they get a win-win from it, because product manager now she didn't need to do any more prototyping. She involved her product designer more into brainstorming session, and then a product designer also, of course, she was glad to have a space and air for her design work. The second one, it's called like a 360-degree view. I had it in my past when you basically have a product manager with a totally different experience and personalities, I'd say. So I worked with a product manager who more like into data and analytics and had not that much knowledge of user habits or behaviors or logics. So we just defined, okay, who's doing what, who's good at what, and then we shared it with each other. And the key here is not fight against, but actually be curious to learn from each other. Yeah, the general what is a recommendation, but it's actually work. And the third, when a product manager has plus minus the same background and the same tasks as you being a product designer. And in this case, you're not you're not negotiating who is going to be cooking today for dinner. You're just saying, okay, I'm doing this. You can peel potato, I will do tomatoes or whatever. You just define, just speak out loud on it, enjoy it, because two heads are better than one. And anyway, you will have more solutions. You can go more into quality. And at the end, remember, you're all doing one product. That's what actually matters. No matter how people you have, your customer will see it as a one product. And yeah, kind of closing my small talk today, 3 main takeaways. The first one, talk, analyze the trends and flows of each other, no matter who you are, product manager, product designer, product owner, or just, I don't developer even. The second one, learn about the design process in your company. It differs. It can differ significantly. For example, it can say, okay, it's a product designer, but he's more into visual, for example, and then you should support him into user research phase, or it could be totally opposite situation. And the third one, define, yeah, who's responsible for what, and then collaborate, and of course, enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ekaterina, for the wonderful talk. So now we are open for questions from the audience. Let's see.
I have a question. Sorry. Ekaterina, just a question. For example, who is the person that is responsible in your mind to check which problem are you trying to cover, or are you trying to solve, or to identify with the user problems, the customer problems? Is the product manager, because he's the person that is responsible for the roadmap and to define which problem are you trying to solve, or is the product design?
So that's the question which can't be, strictly answered, because as I've told you, it depends on the company structure. Some company, for example, has an ability that a designer is responsible for final call, but in most of the companies, it's basically product manager or product owner who is doing the final call. So it depends on your company structure who is doing it. The trick here, anyway, to discuss it with each other, and even in these roadmaps, product manager more from business perspective, right? But still, you need to build user-friendly and like desirable product. So I'd say in most of the companies, product manager does the final call, but it's like on his responsibility. But do you want it to be as profitable and as user-friendly as possible or not? It's also, like tricky part. There are some companies which more UX mature and designers are kind of voting with product managers, and they're like have, collaboration. So they need to have an agreement before they even put it in a roadmaps. But it's not that many companies who are actually doing it or starting with a design thing.
Nice, thanks.
Next question. Okay, so I have a question. Oh,
Sure,
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, a simple question. So these are interesting problems, and they can come when you have 2 people or 20 people for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, how big is your team now? Like how many PMs and product designers are you know, collaborating? I was going to say fighting over this, collaborating over these questions. So how big is your team?
Yeah, so we a little bit like shrinked in last years, being as a company. We have right now around like 20 product designers. And usually 1 or 2 designers are attached to a like cross-functional team with 1 product manager. So it's mostly like 1 product designer and 1 product manager. For last 2 years, I've been working at Omio, worked with more than like 10 different product managers. So, and there were actually lots of things, like we kind of fighted with some we didn't fight. Right now, I'm really happy that we are complementing each other. And yeah, just sharing from my experience, you know, there were times when a product manager just sent me a task, and it was just a header of saying, okay, redesign it, but it's like, okay, it's not even a brief, it's not even a kickoff, it's just a title, you know, what I should do with it. And it's like, okay, maybe you trust me that way. I was like, I don't know, but then I am kind of a product owner of it if I will define everything, right? Because when you are doing problem statement and defining user need, you're at the same time also doing kind of mapping what you're going to measure at the end. That's why it's super important, you know, not to skip this phase, but actually to map it. And then you will have like instant answer how we are going to measure it and like which methods to use for it. Yeah, so I backed up to this product manager with a title like, hey, okay, I can't work like this, let's define. So we actually talked with him, and he shared that, hey, I'm covering lots of teams, I don't have enough time for actual like documentation. I said, okay, I will support you with the documentation, with the writing, but at least let's have conversation about it, because I need your understanding how you're gonna, what's your vision here? What are we trying to achieve? Because, you know, most of times we as product managers or product designers, we are blind with actual business goals because we start with user problems. However, in lots of situations, product managers are starting with, okay, we need to rise this metric, right? We need to increase conversion, we need to this. So it's totally different approaches. You see what I'm saying? And when you are not communicating it to us, and when you are coming with already kind of, oh, I have an idea how to do this, how to increase. And if you're not communicating to a product designer, what are we trying to solve with it? Then we are missing it. Because sometimes it's better to come to a designer and say, okay, we are trying as a business to increase our retention on this page, right? Or interaction, or lower the session time. And you will have one idea how to do it, just from your experience. But a product designer will have 5 more ideas how to do it. And even sometimes it's not connected to the same page or even to the same feature. And from my perspective, why to lose such an opportunity where you can evaluate it as early as possible? That's why I'm saying, if you can't, just from your structure, org structure, if you can't involve product designer to strategy meetings, at least have like coffee talk with him, you know, like, oh, we are trying to solve this and that. And as transparent as you could be with business goals, please do. Because otherwise we are gonna imagine it in our head, and it's going to be like, you know, illusions, and everyone understands it differently. But in the middle of development, it's usually, you know, dig it up like, oh, okay, we're actually doing it for that goals, for that business goals. So it shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be in the middle of already development where you block, when you stop features, where like, okay, we're not doing it right now, and etc. etc. It's like, I mean, it's not a waste for us to know about why we're doing it as a business. Not at all. We are still interested in it. We need it as a check mark, yeah, to understand.
Yep, thank you. Can I have a second question?
Yes, go ahead.
So, do you feel like after, I don't know, 5-year experience, 10 years experience, we all become unicorns, like product managers should tend to do more design and understand design through and through, and designers should have a good understanding of PM and also cover that part completely?
Actually, no. Of course, if you're a startup of 4 people, you're probably doing multiple roles. But if we're talking about medium and large companies, no, because I see product manager more as a manager. So you're basically a connector of different parts of development, of design, of user research, of business, of strategy planning. So we need this kind of connector, you know. Otherwise, apart from product design, there's also like user research team, right? And depending on the state of the company, sometimes you do have it and sometimes you don't have it. Sometimes product manager even does user interviews, and most likely product designer does it. And I'd say the more understanding and the more quality do you have, the more like, you know, narrow specialists you should have. But it's a tricky thing, right? Because the more narrow specialists you have, the more vital the connector is. So it's nice to have a product manager with understanding how it works, with understanding how the process is, how design process is organized. But we don't need you as product managers to be involved in actual like solution brainstorming, user need findings, because otherwise it's going to be a company of 1 person. So that's my understanding.
All right, thank you.
Super. So do we have any more questions? Okay, so turn for my question. So, like you actually mentioned that product managers provide with the low fidelity diagrams. So is it the right thing to do for a product manager, or when do you want us to provide the low fidelity diagrams or the mockups? Or do you literally just want to have a brainstorming session and no mockups at all? Like, because I have seen a lot of product managers using Figma and different tools. So
yes, yeah, a regular answer for today, it depends, right? I don't know how many people do you have in your company.
okay.
I don't know how the process is organized there, but what I've seen and what I've experienced, usually product managers comes with the prototypes, but they are skipping actual like user input there. So it's more like, instead of typing, instead of investing their time of actually digging into, okay, how we can have more, do we need field research? Do we need interviews? How we can grab more data? They're like, okay, I've seen it in our competitors. That's how it could be at ours. So plus, if you have designers, they will probably stop you with it, just because, especially if in your company you have not product designer who does user experience and user interaction, but if you have a separate UX designer, it's basically his work to do all the scenarios and mapping and interaction and all of the logic behind. Okay. So it's basically, if you do have a tool as a UX designer in your team, use it, right? Why to do it yourself? If you don't have it, yeah, then you can share it with your product designer, or you can do it even yourself. And sometimes you don't have product designers at all. At the small startups, you're doing it all yourself. And of course, in Figma, and nowadays there are lots of tools which are pretty simple to use. But I'd say it's a common mistake when you are jumping into visuals and you are skipping the paper, the whiteboard part. Mm-hmm. The trick here, when you go into more visuals, it's going to be much harder for you yourself to then tear it apart and say, no, I was wrong. Because you're putting effort there, you're investing your time. However, when you're doing like a little bit dirty on a whiteboard, on a paper, it's much easier for you, for your own attitude, being a human, just tear apart, okay, no, it's rubbish, next, you know? Mm-hmm. So that's why, yeah, I'd recommend, if you wanna like, okay, I wanted to help my designer, I wanted to do in prototypes, it's better to ask him if it works for him, if he actually into it, you know? Because the majority of us will say, can you please spend more time, give me all the segmentation of users, more data, more clear statements and analyzing, and not jump into prototypes. Yeah, and it's super nice even doing low fidelity together. Yeah.
Okay, super. Thank you so much. So do we have any more questions from the audience?
Just one more question. Do you think if the company has a vision, business oriented, then more the product manager take the decisions, the final decisions without consulting the product designer?
So the question, if you're more business oriented, it's less designer involvement,
yeah.
Right? Usually this how reality is. But it's some, from my experience, usually, you know, like, okay, you're business oriented. And then if you're mature enough, it's like, okay, we have kind of budget. You're hiring like internal designers, or you're doing consultancy and saying, okay, we're kind of blocked. We don't know how to scale. We don't know how to make it bigger and next steps. Yeah, but I do agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
What's your favorite board game for product managers and designers to know each other?
Board games. I'm a board game geek, you know, so it's a really tricky question because it depends how mature you are as a board gamer. Yeah, I have some art box. It's like visuals and a little bit communication. To do like team building or just to enjoy, to do team building. So actually today we're playing remotely Carcassonne, and we are playing remotely with a team Pandemic. Yeah, they are pretty.
We all played that one. It's fine.
Yeah.
Pandemic, we all played it, so it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, like, I won't definitely go into like 5 hours play games because it's not going to be team building. Going to be friendship building.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Super. Thank you so much for your time, Katrina. And it was an amazing presentation. So we're off for today. Have a great day, all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.